So, we're finally here. Amphibia Season 3. The final season of Amphibia. I don't have much to say before this, so let's just recap a bit on what happened at the end of Blue Color. Marcy got stabbed, and now, while she's not necessarily dead, she wasn't exactly at her best situation either. Sasha was left in Amphibia, and Anne and the Planers got transported to Earth. The door for telling an interesting story is left pretty wide open after that cliffhanger, so I'm interested to see where this goes. But without any further ado, let's just start this off. First off, we have the new normal, a pretty good introduction to the new setting of the series. We get to see how Mr. and Mrs. Spoonchoy act in the situation, the robot gets a pretty good introduction, regardless of his later appearances. But anyways, let's just talk about the misadventures that happened while they're on Earth. The Planners obviously have to keep a low profile because that's just how things work on Earth, I guess. But seriously though, the FBI is probably gonna do some creepy experiments on them if they get caught. But who am I kidding? That's obviously never gonna happen, right? Anyways, what I really like here is that this season shows a lot of Anne taking care of the Planner, and this really gives off the vibe that Anne is now paying it forward to the Planners for how much they've done for her in Amphibia. But this of course leads to the adventures themselves, and honestly, seeing these characters have wacky adventures on Earth is pretty fun. Having the frogs adapt to this new environment is pretty interesting. Some of my favorite episodes include adventures in the cat setting, where the Planners try to contribute to the family by taking care of Domino, because they're afraid that they'd become freeloader. However, Mr. Boonchoy points out one thing.
You three took my daughter into your home when she needed it most. You kept her fed and safe for 5 months just out of the kindness of your heart.
You will never owe us anything. Ever.
Really highlights the whole paying it forward theme. And then of course there are some other great episodes, such as Thai Food and Temple Frogs, showcasing a lot of the Thai culture, as well as being great episodes in their own right, and also contains a lot of Anne's parents, and of course, let's talk about them. They're a pretty nice company to have, such supportive parents, honest. But let's talk about some of the stories that they're in. Let's rewind to when we first saw them in the new normal. After Anne gets home, she explains the situation to her parents, and after losing their daughter for 5 months, well, let's just say that Mr. and Mrs. Boonchoy aren't exactly the most trustful of Anne. It's a conflict that makes perfect sense. Who wouldn't be at least a bit overprotective after losing their daughter for 5 months? But eventually, Anne begs for a chance to at least allow them to go to the supermarket, so they finally gave her a chance. Nothing goes wrong, aside from some robot shenanigans that we can put a pan on for now, so the Boonchoys trust her now. For the next few episodes, Anne's parents get to see just how much their daughter has grown, until Anne's Terminator, that is. You see, before this, Anne was hiding a lot of things from her parents, such as the fact that Anne was after her, or what happened to Marcy, because she was afraid that if her parents knew about all of that, then her parents might not accept the Planner. However, as always, there's nothing kept secret that will not come to light. Well, I guess some of you have kept some secrets that no one else has discovered. Self-dubbed aside, one of Andres' robots is now trying to catch Anne for the uptiest time, or else it would die in 60 minutes. And of course... Alright, I should probably get to talking about this robot, shouldn't I?
Eat the rich!
Oh boy. At first, it made a decent appearance in the new normal, even if it wasn't anything too remarkable, but I guess it suffices. But throughout the next few episodes, it just gets less and less threatening. Like almost every single time, the robot just dies in one hit. But oh well, let's just get into the good parts of the episode already. Anne's parents now start to distrust Anne for not being honest about this whole thing. And then of course, we get a confrontation of both of them.
What is going on? No, she's lying to us. You've done something, haven't you? That's why that thing is after us. I knew it. We were wrong about you. You're still the same irresponsible little girl who used to cut class. When are you going to grow up? When are you going to stop getting in trouble? When and when?
I don't know, okay? And I'm sorry. It's true. I did lie. But I did it to protect the people I really care about.
Hey.
After seeing this, you really have to wonder, was Anne really in the wrong for not being 100% honest to her parents from the get-go? The Planners were in huge danger when they first arrived on Earth, and if Anne didn't take them in, who knows what would have happened to them? And the risk of telling everything from the get-go was probably not worth it. Anne gets rid of the robot after using her blue powers, and then the Planners explain everything to the Boonchoys, and of course they all understand. A perfect ending to the episode, what can I say? Speaking of robots, robots though. Let's talk about Polly and Frobo here for a sec. After Frobo being brutally destroyed in True Colors, we get to see Polly trying to fix him here, and it's nice getting some more character development for Polly. Seeing her get smarter, and also having a continuation of True Colors that isn't lame or underdeveloped, but that's all I need to say on this one, so moving on. One thing that I would like to mention is how they use this show's 11-minute structure, and by that I mean that the previous segment links directly to the next. This is not something that's exclusive to the season, the other seasons do this, but I noticed it here the most. So, some examples that I can think of include how Adventures in the Cat Setting follows up on the ending of Typhoon, or Temple Frog immediately picks up where Fight at the Museum left off, with Ant's arc about being too focused on doing research, and the whole mystery. So I guess we should jump into that now. But before that, I want to talk about one thing. This season, or at least the first half of it, has been criticized for being a tonal shift. And where do I stand on that? Well, it's a bit complicated to say the least. Granted, the show has never really been super dark. However, this definitely has something to do with expectation. From the surface, yes, the season does have a similar structure to the first half of the other two seasons. The characters go through some misadventures, as we get to see a bit of the plot, but most of the payoff only really shows up in the second half of the season. That said, when you start looking into the specifics, that's when things start to fall apart. Not only do Marcy and Sasha get very little screen time, thus negatively affecting the character development of one of them especially, but we'll get there when we get there. But also, the lack of response to what happened to Marcy is really bothering. She was just stabbed right in front of their eyes. Can we at least get a few scenes reminiscing on it? I get that they can't make every single episode dark and gritty, but can't they show a bit more response over what happened there? I mean, that seems like a very big deal. I get her hiding it from her parents, but she barely talked about it with the point either, which is just puzzling. Regardless, I'm still gonna say that the episodes here showcase enough world building and character development for me to be satisfied, even if I still have some gripes. But I feel like I should save that for later. But let's get back to the whole mystery now. First off, this jar that looks like it was from Amphibia was found, and then there's also a hidden message on it.
Seek the mother of Olms. She will guide you to your destiny?
The mother of Olms, huh? Well, that's interesting. We then get to see a bit more world building, get to see how the multiverse works in the show, alongside some creepy scientist plot. So I'd say we get a decent amount of plot. The pacing could have been improved a bit, but let's put that on the back of our minds for now. I know I'm saying this for a lot of things, but please just bear with me here. One thing that I would also like to mention here is the characters. I already talked about the Boon choice, but there are also some other cool characters such as the IT girls, Humphrey, Terry, and Dr. Jan. Terry and Dr. Jan especially are pretty important in helping Anne and the Planers get home, with Dr. Jan helping them discover some mysteries with the jar, and Terry literally saved the Planers from a mad scientist at one point. Needless to say, they're pretty charming characters. Alright, I've been ignoring this one for long enough. Let's talk about the FBI. Mr. X, the extraterrestrial part of this fictional version of the FBI, manages to find some sightings of the Planers. I'd say that the FBI here counts as a fun threat, as sometimes Mr. X is treated as comic relief, but the show is not afraid to make him menacing at the same time, and it all feels natural. He's still kind of a goofball, but he also has skill, and of course, government properties, especially in Escape to Amphibia. Alright, let's talk about this episode now, shall we? So, Terry and Dr. Jan have figured out a way to open a portal to Amphibia. Unfortunately, however, it requires an outstanding amount of electricity. While all of this is happening, the FBI finally managed to capture the Planner, and now Anne must find a way to save them. I'd say this episode handles the FBI pretty well, with it showing us some of the advantages that they have over some of the properties, I guess. But another thing that this episode handles really well, probably the best aspect of the episode, is the arc that Anne goes through. Throughout this episode, one realization that Anne made is that she has never really considered what she's gonna be leaving here, since she's been so focused on just trying to get back to Amphibia. Most importantly, of course, her parents. Because remember, in spite of everything that has happened, at the end of the day, Anne is still a kid, being tasked with all of this responsibility and having to leave your parents again, right after you just got back with them. It's hard.
He's right. I am just a kid. How am I supposed to save my friends, beat the FBI, defeat King Andreas, if I can't even bring myself to say goodbye to my parents?
It's a perfectly understandable thought to struggle with. However, what she needs to realize is that, yes, she is still a kid, and she definitely still has her limits. but she is capable of protecting the planners, and so they've returned to Amphibia. Before we leave Earth behind, I want to touch upon why Season 3A is so divisive, from what I've seen at least. As I've pointed out before, I really like a lot of things about Season 3A. However, when you look at the overarching narrative, does it really need to take place on Earth? What advantage does being on Earth have compared to being in Amphibia? Once again, I love the side characters, the Boonchoys, the arc of the Boonchoys taking care of the planners after everything that they've done to Anne. I do believe that Season 3A is great, and is a very valuable part of the show, but I do understand why some people don't think like that, because the stuff that is relevant to the overarching plot here, the whole mystery about the Olms, that can easily be moved to Amphibia, and little would change. The other ongoing plots are mainly relegated to Earth. The multiverse thing, that was rarely ever brought up again. The robot thing, solved immediately in a few episodes. Polly becoming more intelligent, okay, that was actually important since Verbo actually does things this time. The thing is, I greatly enjoyed the Earth episodes because of the side characters, the Boonchoys, the episodes. They are all very enjoyable to me, for reasons that I've already explained. And I know I'm jumping the gun here a bit, but in hindsight, the finale was perfectly paced in my honest opinion, so I don't really have any reason to hold much of a distaste for this part of the season. But for those who are just begging for the overarching plot to continue, or aren't very interested in this plot, or who are watching the episodes as they air without hindsight logic, I can definitely understand, and I'd be interested to hear some other perspectives on this in the comment section if you disagree with what I've said in the video thus far. However, despite what I just said about the finale being paced perfectly, there is a certain plot point that I do feel is undercooked here. But to look into that, we must go back to right after True Colors. Let's talk about turning points. Starting off, we get to see the ending of True Colors in Sasha's perspective.
Marcy!
Yeah, that was pretty disappointing. Just no. I mean, that's how you react to seeing one of your best friends getting stabbed? Yeah, no, this is pretty lame. As you see later in the episode, Sasha can indeed show actual raw emotion when she reads Anne's diary. But let's just move on to that part before I repeat myself again. Anyways, the rest of the episode involves Sasha and Grime deciding to help out Wortwood instead of leaving them, to make up for their past mistakes. And I get why. For Sasha at least, she has been showing doubts and regrets multiple times in the past, especially since she really does want to make it out with Anne, and felt guilty about having betrayed her. That aspect of her character is amplified, so yeah, I completely get why Sasha is doing this. Now Grime, however, yeah, I don't get it. At first, he was completely against the idea of helping Wortwood, but then Sasha confesses to the town's frogs and fight some robots, and then Grime just says, yeah, why not? Like, there's literally no character progression there. That was just a complete 180. I get that Grime cares for Sasha, but really, that's it? But I've rambled long enough. Let's just move on to Commander Anne already. Alright, so Anne and the planners are finally in Amphibia, and it's a straight up war zone. Eventually, they find Sasha and the others now forming a resistance, and alright, let's back off a bit for a second. You know, we never really see the formation of the resistance. Can they have like 2 more episodes about this? I'm not asking for Sasha to be the main character, but a bit more screen time before this could have done wonders to improve her whole arc. And immediately trusting Sasha is something that I'm also conflicted upon. I'm not that torn up over it since I don't want this to be a repeat of season 2, where you could completely see where this thing is going from a mile away. But it is kind of questionable that Anne and the planners just immediately trust Sasha after what had happened in True Colors. Honestly, my problem wasn't even about the concept of the whole distrust plot point in Marcy at the Gates. It was that the one for Anne was done well and the one for Sprague wasn't, despite both of them being predictable. So in some ways, they could have made this whole thing work in the episode. And yeah, sure, Anne gets a bit skeptical towards Sasha at one point, but that was quickly resolved. Although I do like Sasha not trusting herself to be the leader, since the last time she was the leader, well, some bad things happened, let's just say. But Anne pushed for her to be more confident after fully trusting her, and that's something I really like about this episode and season as a whole. Sasha finally using her leading skills in the best way possible is a really great direction for her arc, but that about covers it. Let's talk about some of the other Resistance episodes now, and I gotta say, the lineup of filler or fun episodes this season is pretty weak. They're not all bad. For example, Grime's pupil actually sort of addresses one criticism that I had. Sprague still holds a grudge against Grime, which makes sense. still don't know why none of the other planners does, but I can let it go, I guess. However, for every good episode like that, we get a boring one like Sasha's Angels, where it's basically just an escape sequence extended to an entire episode. They had an interesting side plot, but that's all it amounted to. A side plot. The main plot is just uninteresting, and so I just didn't really enjoy the episode. And I also gotta say, if Newts in Tights and Fight or Flight are the last fun episodes of the show, then sadly they didn't exactly end on a high note. Newts in Tights has an interesting ending, but that's really it. These two episodes focus on returning season 1 characters, but they were really never that interesting to follow up. Like, I enjoyed them as a one-off, but that doesn't mean that I want a continuation of them. So I'm sad to say that the roster of filler here are pretty underwhelming. Especially when the first 2 seasons, and even season 3A, had a pretty high standard for themselves. But that doesn't mean that it can't have an interesting main plot. Let's talk about them now by first diving into the old world. We first saw an Olm back in season 2's Quarrelers Pass, where they were trying to kill Sprig and Polly. Like I said, the mysterious jar told them to seek Mother Olm. Now, the gang are seeking help from those 2 Olms, Lizel and Angwin, to seek Mother Olm. The Olms are one of the more interesting takes on the underground society tropes that I've seen. The city is gorgeous, and the whole society not believing in second chances is also interesting. I also like the way Sasha confronts the leader of this town.
You are the biggest moron I have ever met!
Excuse me?
Whoa, Sash, I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't care anymore, Anne. Lizel and Angwin bent over backwards to prove they deserved a second chance. But this snooty despot and her crummy town aren't worth it. Come on, guys. If these idiots want to perish in denial, that's their business. Let's get out of here.
And then of course, we have the Mother of Olms. I like how she's not super formal or anything like that, but I guess that's just the trend of the show by this point. Although, Mother Olm has some memory problems because she's old. And I like the little storyline of Hop Up and Mother Olm reminiscing on getting old. And I also gotta give it to this show for making the whole exposition scene about the prophecy still engaging for me, when I'm usually bored when expository scenes like this come along. I don't know. The whole presentation of this scene, the whole atmosphere, and the prophecy being more of a request for help rather than destiny. This scene just grips me more than other prophecies. But alright, we've talked enough about Anne and Sasha for now. Let's see how Marcy is doing. And let me just say that we've got some good episodes to talk about here. First of all, we have Olivia and Eunice. Here, we get to see some character and bonding moments between, you guessed it, Olivia and Eunice. Oh, and Marcy as well, of course. We get to see the character's worst fear, a trope that I am fond of, to say the least. And since all of this is fake, they get to mess around with some creative character designs here. Anyway, Marcy gets possessed by the core, and this scene makes for an iconic ending. Gosh, even Andreas can't look that so intense. And the next episode we see Marcy in is also pretty good. Enter the Core and the King. First off, we get to see Marcy being possessed here.
Greetings, Marcy. I mean, the Core. I mean, Marcor? Okay, what do I call you?
Good question, big guy. Why don't you call us Darcy?
Darcy?
Yeah, you know, like Dark Marcy. It's a reference to one of Marcy's favorite video games. We searched her memories, and the name appeals to us.
The whole reception of Darcy from the fan base is divisive, to say the least. Some people really like her quirkiness, while others feel like it made her not threatening at all. Where do I stand on this? Well, I really like Darcy. Sure, she's not exactly the evil and serious some of us were expecting, but I think that's a good thing. I love Darcy inheriting some of Marcy's quirkiness, and despite that, she is still a very threatening villain on her own. However, the main plot of the episode is exploring Andreas' past, and I like how it shows that Andreas, being this leader who is obsessed with invading Earth, is kinda the fault of his father. That doesn't justify his bad actions, but it certainly is an explanation. We also get to see Leaf and Beryl. Leaf being a frog, and as you can see, is also very clearly a planner, and Beryl being a toad, you might remember the name of from the season 2 episode Beryl's beforehand. Back then, Amphibia wasn't so divided. Newts, toads, and frogs can all live happily together. But that all changed when this incident happened. You see, when Leaf touched the gems of the Calamity Box, what was back then the Newt's most treasured possession, yeah, Leaf just saw a vision of things that would happen. Leaf knows about the dangers of this box, but Andreas just has to follow Aldrich, who is Andreas' father, by the way. Also, a lot of things were shown, including stuff that hasn't happened yet. Anyway, Leaf hid the box from Andreas, and Andreas gets angry at Beryl, and they all have broken up now. Honestly, what a tragic and amazing story. This flashback gave us some very important foreshadowing and backstory, alongside being a great episode on its own. And honestly, what more can I ask for? But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about the show before we dive into the final act. Be prepared, everyone, because we are about to dive into the final 3 episodes of Amphibia. I'm kind of sentimental about this one because I just dedicated the past 2 months of my life into this whole project, covering why I love the show and why I think it's special. And now it's finally the end for the show and this fun little project. But without any further ado, let's start by covering the Three Armies. The Three Armies is a simple one. Anne and Sasha try to get the frogs, toads, and newts to work together. Tritonio acting this way about frogs is a bit weird, considering that he had no problem whatsoever teaching Sprig and Polly. Granted, it was mainly for his game, but my point still stands, since it was shown in the episode that Tritonio does see a real potential for the 3 of them, so this feels kind of inconsistent. Also, Tritonio is kind of a weird choice here, isn't he? Like, couldn't they have just picked, I don't know, Priscilla? She seems like a better choice than Tritonio, in my opinion. I don't know, I just never really enjoyed Tritonio that much, is what I'm trying to say. And also, the conclusion to the whole conflict is honestly pretty lame, with Anne just telling them to stop being such foolishly foolish fools, and then everything goes fine. But yeah, the Three Armies is mainly just a warm-up episode before we get to the real stuff, so without any further ado, let's just jump straight into the beginning of the end. Oh my gosh, this episode is amazing. We have the whole great battle scene, whether it's the distraction or the battle between Anne and Sasha versus Olivia and Yunnan. Like, seriously, dance fighting is becoming a new trend in animation these days, and I love it. But anyways, the main thing that I want to talk about here is of course the whole situation between the trio. Sasha is having a hard time still thinking about what Marcy did, but Anne points out that what she did may not be right, but they all have made mistakes before.
Forgiveness is hard, and it can take time. But believe me, it's worth it. I mean, just look at what you and I have now.
I love that scene. Not only did it call back to when Hop Pop and Anne were having some problems, but also Anne and Sasha's whole arc. They had it pretty rough back in seasons 1 and 2, so it's nice to see how far they've come, even if the handling of the arc could have been a bit better at some points. There's also the flashback at the beginning which shows that back on Earth, Anne and Sasha have kinda been ignoring Marcy's interests. Granted, Marcy probably shouldn't have forced it down the other's throat, but at the same time, Anne and Sasha should have made more of an attempt to at least understand or respect Marcy's interests. Speaking of, we also get to see more of Darcy this time, and oh my god is she menacing. Even Andreas is bowing down to her, and of course, the Earth invasion begins. Alright, now is the time. It is time for us to talk about the longest episode of Amphibia, the most action-packed episode of Amphibia. I don't see any need to further delay this. Ladies, gents, and others, all in. We start with a flashback like all of the previous finales, and I'd say that this is the best one out of all of them. The trio are pulling a prank by interrupting a school announcement with a freaking Blackpink song, and oh my god, that cracked me up. Sasha and Marcy didn't receive a bad talk with the principal, but Anne, however,
Sup is that I'm worried about you, Boon Choi.
Oh? Like, me specifically, or...?
Yep.
Yeah, remember, back in the beginning of Season 1, Anne wasn't who she is now. Anne's character growth is arguably the biggest part of the show. It is a very crucial thing, and as I've stated many times over these 3 videos, it is done wonderfully. Back in the present though, Anne and the others have now been held captive right after the beginning of the end. Fortunately though, Provo managed to get them free, and so the invasion is now in progress, and oh boy has it caused a lot of destruction already. already, and we've got some stuff to talk about here. Let's check it off one by one. Let's start with the human characters, and I gotta say, it's really nice seeing them again because I really enjoyed Mr. X, and the Boonchoys are some of my favorite characters from their appearances, so it's nice seeing them again. But let's get serious now, as the herons that Andreas is controlling are the same herons that killed Frigate Polly's parents. This understandably gives the planners some traumatic flashbacks, but with the help of Anne and Frobo, they're able to overcome it, and it is really satisfying to watch them overcome this, and not only that, but also the way that they overcame this is pretty clever. The planner family dance that we saw in Anne Hunter. Yeah, this is amazing. I don't have any clever transition for this one, but since we're covering each of the major plot points that I want to talk about one by one, I figured I should talk about the battle between Sasha and Grime versus Darcy. After getting some help from Olivia and kind of Yuna, maybe she didn't really do much in this episode, Sasha and Grime managed to reach Darcy, and I just love how crazy and insanely powerful Darcy is. We'll definitely talk more about the core as we go along. For now, let's stick to the battle because we've got a lot to talk about. Okay, so let's just stay calm for a bit. Alright. Oh my god, this scene is so good. Wait, look at the shot and this. Oh lord, this is so cool. And did Grime's arm just get cut off? First of all, I don't really know how to comment on this scene. It's honestly just amazing. I love it whenever a cartoon character uses a slicer, because since you're moving the entire body here, it allows them to be so creative with the expressions and movement here. Secondly,
Looks like he's disarmed. Get it? Disarmed?
what just happened? Grime getting disarmed was such an unexpected move from the writers, and I absolutely love it. It really shows how much of a maniac Darcy is, and also,
before I met you, I was nothing. Just a bully in a tower. But you inspired me to be so much more. And if you can do that, you can do anything. You can do this.
God, that's emotional. Man, I just love the bond that these two have. I don't even know what more to say other than that. This just perfectly wraps up Grime's character arc from being a soulless leader to an actually caring person. I didn't talk about his character much, but it is something worth addressing. But let's talk about Darcy. And by that, I mean both Marcy and the core. The core is the amalgamation of the smartest minds in Amphibia. Inside it lives the ancestors of Andreas. Marcy is invited to join them, and for a while she actually buys Aldrich's act. But eventually, she realizes that this is all just an illusion, and that she will never be truly happy there, and that, more importantly, she can no longer escape reality.
I started this whole mess because I wanted to escape that reality. But I won't run away from it anymore!
And now, let's see Anne's side of the story. Andreas proposes a challenge to Earth, and I just love this scene.
I'll call off this whole invasion if Anne Boonchoy beats me in single combat.
Seriously, this is such a perfect payoff for Anne's arc.
You know, before I ended up in Amphibia, I didn't care about right or wrong. I just did what was easy. I let people walk all over me. And I think that's because I didn't love myself. Not really. But meeting you three has changed all of that. And these months we've spent together have shown me the person I really want to be. Trap or not, I have to do this.
At the beginning of the series, Anne was kind of irresponsible, and as we see in Reunion, she turns into peer pressure pretty easily. Throughout the series, however, we get to see her grow, being more responsible, overcoming peer pressure. You all know this, we've been through it all, and seeing this scene just makes me very, very, very emotional. Let's lighten up the mood a bit, because this action scene is absolutely spectacular. Seeing Anne go super and beat up Andreas was so cool. And that moment where the crowd cheers Anne up while as if it's your last place, it's absolutely perfect. But now, let's end the discussion of All In by seeing how it all ends. Anne eventually runs out of power, and now Andreas has the upper hand. as Darcy also gains the upper hand over Sasha and Grime. But we have been strictly talking about Anne and Sasha over the last few paragraphs. Let's not forget about the planners, because it turns out Sprig steps in to save the day. Sprig took Leaf's letter that we saw at the end of Newts and Dights and uses Mr. X's glasses to transcribe it all.
After hiding the music box on Earth, I knew I could never return to the kingdom. Change was scary, and it was hard for me to open my heart to others again. But I'm glad I did. We spend our lives afraid of change. But after many years, I realized the beauty of life is the change. The two of you never really left my side. In the end, my only remaining wish is that somehow, someday, my love reaches you.
Change has always been an important part of the show. From Anne to Sasha to Hop-Up to Polly to Sprig to Grime to Marcy, everyone has changed throughout the show in one way or another, and situations will always change, which can be scary to think about, but it's a part of life. Change has been talked about a lot recently in cartoons. However, I do think Amphibia is one of the best when it comes to covering this topic. We'll talk more about this in a moment, but let's go back to All In now. Andreas eventually loses the will to fight, which distracts Darcy for long enough that Sasha was able to get the final blow she needs to defeat Darcy.
I am not that person anymore.
A perfect way to end Sasha's character arc as she confronts the biggest manipulator in all of Amphibia. And as Anne beats Andreas, we get one final reveal on his character, and answers the question that I've had ever since True Colors.
Living for 1,000 years was not without sacrifice.
I like how they handle Andreas' character here. They show that he's mainly the second villain in charge, and is forced to do this because of Aldrich and the rest of the Corps. But they never outright justify or redeem him for what he's done. Anyways, now the day is saved, Marcy is saved, and oh my god, it's just so heartwarming seeing the girls reunite together. Once again, forgiveness and change. Anne has forgiven Sasha and vice versa, and now it's time for both of them to forgive Marcy, and accept the fact that things will never stay the same. But man, is it nice just to see these three girls to be happy once again. All in All In is an amazing episode. It ties up a lot of things perfectly, and it's just such a heartwarming, heartbreaking, and overall, just an engaging episode. I absolutely love it. But the Corps isn't done yet. It still has one final ditch effort to take the Calamity powers, and let's see it all unfold in the final episode of Amphibia, and Sasha's and Marcy's final adventure in this world. For one final time, let's hop into the hardest thing. After stopping the Earth invasion, little did the girls know that the Corps still has one final trick up its sleeve. And what might that be? Well, I'll let you see for yourself.
Hey, is it just me, or is the moon getting closer?
The Corps is gonna crash down the moons of Amphibia, Majora's Mask style. Seriously, this thing is willing to do anything if it means getting the stones, even destroying an entire society, and the only way to stop it is, you guessed it, for all of the three girls to use the power of the Calamity Stones. However, if they use the three stones all at once, it's gonna use a lot of power, and there might be a chance that the stones all get destroyed, and they'll all be stuck in Amphibia forever. Of course, they all accept the risk, because after everything that Amphibia has done to them, they're just not going to back down. Before they all go, however...
Didn't I tell you about that?
No!
Well, the stones are rumored to hold a hidden power, enough to defeat any foe. But summoning such power comes at a price.
So, whoever uses the spell and calls on the power of all three stones will die.
Yeah, if the situation is so dire, Anne is willing to die for Amphibia, but of course, there's just no way that that's gonna happen, right? Anyway, now Valeriana is here, and now is going to help the girl achieve their Calamity form, and...
Warriors of Amphibia, arise!
Oh my god, these look amazing. I don't really know how to describe it really, they're just inherently so good to look at for me. And after this, we get what is, in my honest opinion, one of the best scenes in the entire show. No, I'm not even kidding, or exaggerating or whatever. No, this scene is just amazing to me. Where do I even begin with this? Okay. First of all, look at the animation here. Oh my god, this is amazing. It's just so fluid and colorful and oh my god. Alright, next up the music and oh my god, this music. Seriously, such a perfect remix of No Big Deal. Just listen to it. Seriously, this gives off some massive live and learn vibes. This scene as a whole just feels heartwarming and cathartic. After all of the hardships that they went through, the rough times, the cracks in their friendship, it's so nice to see them just having fun with their powers and beating up some robots together. The facial expression says it all really. I can't say enough good things about this scene, but I guess it's time to move on. The girls are having trouble trying to stop the moon by themselves, so Andreas finally tries to help them and finally stand up to the core. And this scene kinda brings me some deja vu.
You fool! You could have been immortal! What are you doing?
Something I should have done a long time ago. Standing up to you!
Something I should have done a long time ago. Standing up to you!
I love that parallel. Unfortunately, however, Sasha and Marcy aren't as used to this power as Anne, so their power is running out, and the robots are also struggling. Out of choice, Anne decides to use the secret spell. Of course, no one allows her to do this as she might not make it, but it's the only way to stop the core.
You'd better come back alive, Boon Choi! I swear to frog you'd better!
Man, the voice acting here just gets me every time. So, Anne sends Sasha and Marcy back down, but Sprague, well, he isn't ready to accept this yet. Before Anne sacrifices the stone, the core questions if Anne really wants to use and possibly even destroy Amphibia's greatest treasure against it. But Anne makes the point that
These stones are not Amphibia's greatest treasure!
before Anne dies, however, Sprague approaches Anne.
Please don't do this! Don't go! I don't know what I'll do without you! You're my everything!
Throughout the show, Sprague and Anne have become such close friends, always being there for one another, always helping each other grow, helping each other reach their desires, and seeing Sprague just begging for Anne to not do this, in spite of the threat literally being in front of him. It's just so heartbreaking.
You changed my life!
And you've changed mine.
You've changed my life, and you've changed mine. Oh my gosh. Such a great scene. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record now, but really, this episode has just been hit after hit after hit. From wholesome, threatening, and emotional, this episode has it all. And so, she uses the stone, and that's it. Anne dies. It's over. The story of Anne Boonchoi is over. Except maybe it isn't. We see Anne on this mysterious island in space, which was actually foreshadowed by the way. But anyways, she goes inside the house and this is interesting. There are so many little details here. Portraits of the characters, Anne's other shoes, Sprague's action figures, the little domino doll. It's interesting. But anyways, there's this little old computer here and...
Hello? Hi, who are you? What's going on? I am the cosmic guardian who has watched over countless worlds for countless eons. Whoa. Okay. So, what's going on? Am I dead or something?
Yes and no. I made a copy of you right before you expired. A backup, if you will. For all intents and purposes, you're the same Anne Boonchoi.
Interesting. The Three Stones deity. This whole scene is left pretty vague, but the gist of it is that Anne was cloned before she died by God. What's the origin of this God? Is this the same soul? Is this a different soul with all of Anne's memories? It's all left pretty vague and I love it. It makes room for theories and interpretations. It's nice. Anyway, the deity is taking form of Domino because its true form would be too much for the human mind to handle and...
I don't know. I've seen some pretty crazy...
I like how they actually showed the form instead of just stopping at the whole, oh, my form is too much to handle thing. Anyways, the stone's deity offers for Anne to replace it since for the eons that the stones had been around, she's the only person who has used it for good. But Anne declines as at the end of the day, she's just a 13-year-old teenage girl. For every good decision she makes, she'd make 10 more bad decisions. She still has a lot more to learn, and her time in Amphibia has shown that. So, after hearing this, the deity decides to bring her back to life.
I'm sending you back to the world of the living. You've shown me the error in my thinking. And if you can do that at age 13, then imagine the guardian you'll be after a life fully lived. Go, live your life. I've waited thousands of years to retire. What 78 years more?
Wait, are you saying that in 78 years I'm gonna...
So I guess that means that she's gonna become god at age 91. Oh, and side note, this clone of Anne isn't perfect as it has her shoe in the wrong foot, so that's neat. Now Anne is back alive and sees the others still being sad over her death, so she essentially crashes her own funeral. And man oh man, is this scene so heartwarming. I mean, just Anne reuniting with Sasha and Marcy and the planners for one last time. Well, I guess this really is time to say goodbye. Before we get into that though, I should mention that the deity gave Anne the Calamity Shards as a replacement for the stone so that the trio can get back home. However, to prevent any more chaos, these are not as powerful as the Calamity Stones and will break only after one use. Marcy said goodbye to Olivia and Yunnan, the two newts who took care of Marcy the most, as well as Andreas. Sasha and Grime try to have a formal and emotionless goodbye, but you know they just can't hold it. Sasha tells Grime to find Percy and Braddock to tell them Sasha's goodbye, and I love how Percy and Braddock never came back after Beryl's Warhammer. It shows that there are consequences to Sasha's actions. And finally, Anne's goodbye to the planners. She thanks Hop-Pop for taking her in, and jokes with Polly about how she's gonna take over the world without Anne as her moral compass, and then of course, a goodbye with Sprig. We get the last of their iconic fist bump, the last sprint against the world, and now, it's time for the trio to say goodbye. I love that hug. It's so well animated. And so, the girls all return to their lives, the shards all shatter, and that's the end of it. To say that this ending is controversial would be quite the understatement. The trio not being able to get back to Amphibia and being separated forever is quite a lot to take in. However, am I a fan of it? Yes, I am. Let's take it from the top. Amphibia is a story where three girls get transported to another world. While there, they found new surrogate family, and while in there, they changed a lot, they grew a lot. Amphibia is a place for them to change, not to stay in forever. And as the title of the episode suggests, this isn't just the hardest thing for the characters to accept, but for the fans as well. But having them stay in Amphibia together and being able to return to both worlds whenever they want, isn't that too good to be true? Especially for this show, which never struggles to tell realistic stories and characters. I just love how raw and harsh and realistic this ending is, despite being an isekai show per se, but that's just my take on it. Of course, you're free to have your own opinion as always. And now, for the epilogue. 9 months later, Amphibia has been healed from Andreas' industrialization. The newts, toads, and frogs are all now at peace. Polly is now a frog, Bessie and Joe Sparrow somehow have a child now. I'm not even gonna question the logic at this point. Grime, Olivia, and Yunnan have become dignitaries of Toads and Newts respectively. Olivia and Yunnan are shown to be dating. It's sweet. And now, Sprig is a researcher, which is honestly just sweet. Especially when you compare this to a trip to the archives, where he said that he hates reading and just want to jump into adventures. But Anne has motivated him to learn more and be more diligent. And you know, this is just a headcanon, but maybe someday, Sprig will go back to college in Utopia once he's ready for it. I mean, considering that he's doing a lot of research now, it's possible to say the least. Anyway, today's the day for the ceremony. For what, you may ask? Well, I'll just let you see this one. Anne got a statue as a memorial for her and the trio's time in Amphibia. That's, once again, sweet. And as the cherry on top, Rhyme discovered an uncharted territory in Amphibia, which can lead to a spin-off even if there's no plan yet. Matt Brawley said that he's open to the idea of more spin-offs after a long break, and yeah, that was the epilogue in Amphibia's side. It's just kinda sweet. I don't know what else to say. I mean, all's well that ends well, am I right? But now, we move to Earth, and now it's 10 years later. Marcy now has a webcomic, Sasha is now a psychologist, and Anne is now a herpetologist. It's just sweet seeing Sasha now respect and support Marcy's interests, and Anne making these little Amphibia replicas. Sasha now helps children with their emotional baggage after everything that she went through. I also love the line about Anne and Sasha drifting apart. It makes sense. They're still friends, but they just went to different social circles. I think a lot of people, including me, have experienced that at some point, and this last line is just wow.
Change can be difficult, but it's how we grow. It can be the hardest thing to realize you can't hold on to something forever. Sometimes, you have to let it go. But of the things you let go, you'd be surprised what makes its way back to you.
And finally, we get to see the extended credits, which is honestly just nice. In the final shot of the show, as we see a new BFF picture, oh my god, this whole flashback, it's all just so sweet. Before we bring this to a close, I do want to point out some nice little things for one last time. The rings here resemble each of the trio's colors respectively, green being Marcy, magenta being Sasha, and of course, blue being Anne. The green ring here is further away from the other ring, alluding to Marcy moving away. The thigh text here either translates to complete or the end. And there are some more neat little stuff here. Just check the wiki if you want to find out more. But with all that said, Amphibia comes to a close. Amphibia Season 3 is quite the roller coaster, not just in terms of the plot points thrown at us, but also the quality. If I hadn't made it clear enough, this is the most inconsistent season in my opinion, with the highest highs, but also lowest lows. The Earth episodes were pretty fun, but with everything that's currently going on, they feel a bit out of place. Turning Point was a great starting point for Sasha's character development, and while the start and end of it was nice, the middle part is quite lacking. The finale was near perfection, but the stuff that came before it, with the whole Resistance arc, was honestly kind of a mixed bag. But is all of this enough to ruin the season for me? Absolutely not. This season was still an enjoyable ride through and through. We get to see more of Sasha, more of Andreas, more of the Planners, more of Anne, more of all of the characters that I love. And we also get to see some new stuff here like the Olms Society, the war, etc, etc. Not all of it was well executed, but I feel like for every bad episode, we get 2 more great ones. For every out of place and boring Earth episode, we get a meaningful character progression, such as Polly becoming smarter and more independent for the sake of Robo. For every boring Resistance episode, we get some interesting lore or character development for Sasha, Mother Olm, Hop-Pop, you name it. This season is the weakest in my honest opinion, but it's still great regardless. The beginning of the end, all in, and the hardest thing all form a perfect finale, and form what is honestly one of my favorite stories ever told. And that wouldn't have worked if it wasn't for how amazing the characters are, how amazing the plot is, and just overall how amazing the show is. And Season 3 definitely played a part in that role. And so, to end this video off on a positive note, I will tell you the story of what Amphibia means to me. I first knew about Amphibia back when a commercial of it was shown on Disney Channel. At the time, I thought, this looks okay. The show premiered, and at first, I was like most other people and just put Season 1 down after watching a few episodes, and I didn't think much of it. Until Season 2, when it was the pandemic. Everyone was stuck inside, and it's the premiere of Amphibia Season 2. Now, all of a sudden, people are discovering this show, and that made me curious. After the Owl House Season 1 ended, I decided, why not, and jump back into it. Before I went to Season 2 though, I decided that I was gonna give Season 1 another chance, with the caveat that, if I didn't enjoy Season 1, I would just hop straight into Season 2. Fortunately, however, I had a newfound appreciation for Season 1, and so, I was more than excited to jump into Season 2, and I loved it. After season 2 had finished airing was when I got the idea that, hey, when I'm done with all of the Sonic stuff, I'm gonna take a look at Amphibia on my channel, give season 1 the praise that it deserves, and sing the praises and hype for season 2. And so I did, and I really enjoyed it. Of course, I already want to change some things about those videos by now, but I'm still glad that I made them. But the impact the show had on me was way more than that. As some of you might know from hearing my voice, I'm still in my teenage years now, and Amphibia has helped me get through a lot of it, giving me the motivation to overcome peer pressure from the tale of Anne and Sasha, being able to relate to each of the 3 girls in some way, helping me gain some self-esteem after watching Anne having an inferiority complex with Marcy, helping me accept that some things will change and that you cannot hold on to some things forever. All of this, and probably many more examples, are how Amphibia helped me, and it's just why I love this show and will remember it fondly. Of course, it isn't perfect, but I don't go into fiction expecting perfection. I expect enjoyment, and this show provides that, plus it helped me through tough times, especially during 2020 when we were all going through a tough time. So thank you, Amphibia. Thank you, Matt, Raleigh, and the amazing cast and crew for working on this amazing show that I will continue to cherish. It's been an honor being along with the ride. It's been wonderful. I look forward to what either Matt or anyone in the crew have in store next. And until then, I'll see you on the other side.